Hey everybody, it's me, Brandon Atwood, aka B1 for YouTube, and I shaved, but that's not why I'm making this message. I am called to share my opinion on a lot of things, but I guess how I can say is that this is going to be a testimony of my experience through life um, regarding um, the world and the spirit and God. So if you're interested, keep watching. If not, see you later. Um, so I'm gonna start as a kid. I grew up with my mom. She was a single parent, and me and my younger brothers, um, we were raised by her, and she was like non-religious, and she didn't like push any religion or anything like that. And I was a pretty crazy kid, still am kind of crazy, but I like I kind of always had the intuition that there was a God, regardless of if she told me anything or didn't tell me anything. So as I grew up, I started to want information about my intuition, feeling that there was a God and that there's something that is creating this and or created this, and you know kind of curiosity on why I'm here, and maybe finding that will find the answers. So I basically um, I I grew up without any of that, but as I was growing into my teenage years, I started diving into a lot of different things. I remember, on early YouTube, I like stumbled upon conspiracies, and the conspiracies kind of got me to a point where I started feeling a lot of fear, a lot of fear, and still knowing, with my intuition that there was a God, it made me think that, like everything that's created was like, was created by God, but that the creations itself wasn't God, and like I started looking into all these things, like these conspiracies on evil, on like hidden agendas, things like that, and it kind of got me, like I said, fearful. I eventually, started in my like high school years, mid high school years, started like looking into Eastern religious things, or Eastern philosophy sort of stuff, like Buddhism, Hinduism, Taoism, and I kind of thought, like that stuff was right, I guess, compared to what I had seen with the Western stuff. Um, I only had a few um, encounters, or not encounters. I only had a few uh, like experiences with Western religion, and it was just like very sideline observation of like Catholic stuff and Christian stuff, being like where I went with neighbors to like Bible study here and there, and some of the experiences where I was like going to Bible study or church and stuff, it would just be like, a place I never been, with like a neighbor who was like a member of the church, and I would ask questions, and I always was like, I always felt like I was rubbed the wrong way by it. I felt like my questions were too much for them. Like I was looked at as like somebody who was just like, you know, like lost, and like a lost cause basically, which ironically I feel like Christianity is trying to like save people who are lost, but they didn't know how to handle me, I guess, when I was young. That was the impression I was given from that. So, like me thinking that the Eastern religions and philosophies was more the way, talking about like, life is just like cycles and suffering, and that there's like there's karma, there's like a divine karmic system that will like, kind of put energy where it's due, and like cause and effect sort of things. It kind of made me feel like God was like disconnected from all of this creation that I thought was God's, without really like having a name to it or anything. That, like I'm saying, that was my intuition. So, the experiences I had with the Christianity stuff, they made me want to believe in the Eastern stuff more, because it seemed like that you could ask questions there, and you can, like explore different thoughts there without being, like demonized. And so, anyways, I'm growing, and before any of that stuff really like started, like sinking in, I basically like, like I I came to my own conclusions, and I thought, well, if everybody has their own viewpoint on God, like there must be a God, but I don't need to subscribe to any specific thing, which like led me into spirituality. And spirituality is like, a very broad term, but I basically thought that being spiritual meant acknowledging your spirit, and acknowledging the fact that there is things that happen that aren't of this world, and that are also affecting this world. Like I used to think my body is a vehicle, it's a vessel, and I used to think that my spirit was the one that's like driving it, and that the spirit is going to transition after this body somewhere, and kind of leaning into what I had learned in the whole Eastern stuff, like if I live good, then I go somewhere good, or go better maybe, or maybe have a choice. And like that the spirit is um kind of like more in control of what happens in the spirit realm, but it's not necessarily like, hold on, sorry, these cats are just fighting each other and it's pissing me off. Okay, as I was saying, the spirit, I thought that like the spirit, after this life will transition into something else, and that the spirit, like dwells within life, within this world, right? And the more I got into spirituality, mixed with, like I was saying earlier, mixed with my curiosity and interest for like conspiracies and stuff like that, I got into, this like kind of searching into what's known as the occult, or like hidden information, hidden knowledge. And as I was going into that, um, that's when things kind of started getting intense, I would say. I'll just say intense right now for like a blanket term. What I mean by that though is, before, when I was looking into stuff that was trying to figure out, like information on God and what God is, and since my experience with like Western stuff, or I say Western stuff, but like Christianity, and like that sort of stuff. Um, Basically, nothing nothing really stuck, right? And I had this feeling as I started getting into the spirituality and stuff like that, and with the conspiracy and the occult and stuff, that there's certain things that kind of started making sense. I would say they started making sense. Uh, for example, um, there's a phrase, and it goes, uh, "A picture is worth 1,000 words." And then I heard later, after hearing that, something about, and a symbol is worth 1,000 pictures, right? So as I got into looking into like like conspiracy esque occult stuff, there's like a lot of symbols that are a part of stuff like that, and I started thinking about the symbols that we see on the daily basis. We're seeing things like Starbucks' logo, or like different organizations have like different logos and symbols on them, or if you look, like on the dollar bill, and all these different symbols, and it started me down this path of thinking that, like, well, like, I don't want to, like, ignore certain things on my pursuit of knowledge, on trying to find answers about God. And a lot of that stuff that came from the spirituality stuff was showing me like a darker side. And it kind of made me bitter towards the world, like in a really sort of like victim way, where I thought, well, everything seems to be evil. Everything seems to be evil. And it made me bitter towards God. Like I had already kind of had this thought, like, I want to know. Why don't I know? And, like I had heard, people say, like, the Bible is like, there's like an acronym for the Bible, like basic instructions before leaving Earth. Like people used to say, like, there's no instruction manual for life, like it's just what it is. And I used to think like that kind of made me irritated, like a lot of people who are searching for any answers, might want a manual. Right? So I, you know looking into this like darker stuff, it really made me bitter, and it made me think like, well, we're all just here destined to suffer, and that we don't have uh, like a clear view of what's going on. And since I was kind of inquisitive, and like I had this curiosity, and I started seeing life through the lens of spirituality, it made me see different things of the world in a way that was, making me feel like they're evil. And that evil, just uh, started really showing itself. There were certain things that I would just like feel, like rather than just see them, right? I would feel them on a way where I didn't like it. It felt as if the world was attacking me. Every time then I would look at different logos, for example, or I would look at different organizations and different things, and I would just think it's hidden occult sort of symbolism in there, and I would take it as a personal attack. And I guess what really happened in between that point for me, like just curious to then like figuring out that there's these certain things with the occult stuff, that's kind of under this blanket term of spirituality, because there's more things under the blanket term of spirituality also. There's not just these dark things, but that's just kind of where my conspiracy mind went. So taking these things in that way made me really kind of afraid made me even more afraid. It made me even more feel like I'm just like lost and confused and destined for, like just all the suffering that is, like built against the world, and I used to think, that like things were unfair, but also I would see people, who were like benefiting from these systems and stuff, and it just didn't add up to me. It just made me feel like everybody was just like lying and evil, who was up at the top of things, who were running things. And that made me think that, that there's no real sort of good God that is like intervening in any of it. Like all of these systems have been like built. They're built and perfected for the most part. And so that leads me to the point where, the phrase ignorance is bliss. Like before these things really started hitting me, I was like ignorant to the fact that I was a part of these systems, and they didn't hurt me as much. My past is filled with substance abuse. I smoked cigarettes, like very heavily nicotine addict, very heavily alcohol dependent, would drink all the time, smoking weed, um, later experimenting with other drugs, all the different psychedelics and like some uppers and downers and all this other stuff, and one thing though is like I was very, from a young age, I was very afraid of prescription medication, because my mom, she tried to take her life with medication that was just like in our house. No illegal drug, but just like medication, and she almost succeeded, but it was very very traumatizing for me as a young kid. I did try like Vicodin and like oxycodone and like a few once, like just very minimally, and under peer pressure and under being depressed and sad and confused and lost, and um but the other things like alcohol, nicotine, weed, um those stuck with me. Like the one and done with the prescription was not the case for the others. Like I was addicted heavily, and at a time I was ignorant to it, like it didn't really matter what they were doing to me. I knew I was addicted, but they didn't matter what they were doing to me. If if I would smoke a cigarette, right? And it's like for whatever reason. But once you read the article that says, that this sort of thing causes these sort of things and that it's bad for your health in these sort of ways, then I would smoke the cigarette and I would think, dang, like I'm killing myself a little bit, and like, or I'm hurting myself in these ways, and this is not good, yada yada yada, for all the different things that I did. And after a point, it became like not so good, right? And that's the same thing that happened with the whole spirituality thing. It's like there was a moment when I started realizing with the symbolism and stuff that is hidden under this blanket term of spirituality that is affecting all of these things in the world. My I couldn't be ignorant and blissful in the fact that I wasn't like, what I would consider now is like righteous, like I was adding to it, if anything, and I was being eaten up from the inside by all of this stuff. So it hurt, it felt bad. Every, for to compare to my past, I would smoke the cigarettes and think I'm gonna run out of these cigarettes and I'm gonna have to buy more, knowing that I didn't even want to smoke them, and it would just eat at me, right? So simultaneously, I mean, similarly, not simultaneously, but similarly to my view of the world, I was thinking like I'm either promoting these things that I don't like, or I'm choosing them without like, like without, I mean, I'm choosing them with knowledge of the consequences that come with them, which is like, being like a slave to it. And then it started really eating at me because I'm thinking, this can't be it. This cannot be it. And it's not it, which is good, but then it started giving me like more of like a dark outlook on life, like thinking that death is like an escape, that it's something just like any of the drugs or any of the substances that I was using. It's just like the final escape, feeling pretty negative and feeling like a mess up in life, and that at least I got that to look forward to, rather than like being happy with life, and enjoying what it was. Like, it just, like, I had this bitterness in me that I couldn't even enjoy certain things the way I want to. And I then kept searching, and throughout all of this, there was people here and there in my life that would kind of stand out here and there, and they would, like, tell me, like, things maybe about Jesus, or that the devil is, like, real and wants to fucking kill you, basically, and wants you to be his pawn, and like destroy you and kill you. And like, it never really hit. I'm thinking like, whatever, like, that's just like, whatever. And also at the same time, though, it's like, it didn't feel like these people were pushing anything on me, even though I have definitely had the thought that, like, Christianity, with the Crusades and like Mormons who are going door to door and stuff like that, that they want to push these things on people. But the people who are doing that, that's kind of their own story. But these people in my life who would kind of, hint at these things to me, they were, giving me like their hope. I mean, they were giving me hope in their faith. So I would think, like, they, even though they know about the suffering and all this stuff, and they might be like wise to certain things that are hidden, like, they never seemed like truly bothered by them as much as I was, right? I felt super surrounded by them and eaten away at them, where these people wouldn't. And I never really associated like why or how Jesus could be a part of that in any way. But like, one guy that I used to work with was like always just like, like, it was like perplexing to me. I would always wonder, like, what is this guy doing? And like, it just wouldn't make sense. And like, down the line, I kind of see it more clearly. But at the time, when I was surrounded by all the cloudiness and eaten up by all this like evil, which at the time I didn't know where it came from, I didn't really see it clearly. Like, it was deceptive, it was lying to me, and I was buying into the lie. So, I see these other people, and they didn't quite make sense to me, as if they weren't buying into the lie in the ways that I was, even though they were aware of the certain things that were making me feel bad and destroyed, and distraught. So, then there was like another person who like gave me a Bible, like, it's almost like they could read me, and it's not like I'm trying to hide anything. I try to be like a pretty open book about my life. And like, people would just like, this one guy gave me a Bible at this job I was at, and he told me about, all this stuff. And mind you, like, even though I'm being eaten up, and even though I'm like feeling all these things, like, I'm still a pretty happy person. Like, I still like to see the good in things. I still can laugh, and like, I can still, like, appreciate and have love. And I'm like a pretty, like, present person. And I don't really, like, even though I had fallen victim to a lot of this stuff and then like used substances, like, I never really took the escape that extreme, or at least what I had thought, right? Like, I saw other people taking it way more extreme, And I'm thinking, if I would do that, I'd be dead by now, you know? But anyways, then I found like a piece of furniture, and inside of this piece of furniture was this Bible. And it just seemed like, it was like I had a weird feeling to get this piece of furniture, but it was getting thrown away. And I asked the guy who was throwing it away, like, hey, uh, do you mind if I have this? And he's like, yeah, go ahead. And he like kept it to the side for me. And after he was finished, like I well, actually, I saw the furniture, but I knew it was like somebody's throwing it away, and I walked away. And then I came back, and then I saw the guy, which I didn't earlier, and I'm like, hey, I was looking at this thing earlier, and I was, I didn't want to just take it, even though it all looked like it was going to get thrown away. So I was wondering, can I have it? And he's like, yeah, go ahead, you can have that. So I grab it, and not knowing that there's a Bible inside of it, I bring it in, and then I open it up, and I'm like, whoa, there's a Bible. And it just like kind of, it shot me back to why I was even interested in that piece of furniture in the beginning. Didn't really, like, nothing about the furniture was like something that like was special, but it was like, I was thinking like, for some reason, I'm gonna get that. And so I I start giving it a chance, like I give it a chance that I never did when I was a kid. And I I kind of think it's because I was never forced into it that I could do that so willingly. Where I see a lot of people's testimonies where they say, like, I was raised in this Christian thing, and whatever, and blah blah blah. And like, it made me like go away from it. And like, I totally understand that, because that's like the same that I feel for, like, certain things of the world that are just like evil, where it's like, if you're raised, like, for me, I don't like fast food, but like when you were raised eating cheap processed food and shit like that, like, it might be something you're raised with, but that doesn't mean it's right, so I totally understand people who were thinking that about Christianity and stuff like that. And also knowing too, like, there's corruption in a lot of different organizations. So, like, for people who are being exposed to the corrupt side of these organizations like Christianity, it's, like, apparent that, like, you would want to get away from it. So, like, I'm able to, like, kind of give it a chance more and more. And the darkness and the deceit and the lies and stuff that were around me, it's like they didn't want me to know why I was feeling the ways I'm feeling, and the helplessness and what that's like really entailing. Because it's likened to darkness, like, if I'm in a room and it's completely dark around me, completely dark, and there's a light switch on the other side of the room, like, the darkness isn't going to tell me that that light switch is there. It's going to tell me that there's nothing in front of me, like, I'm basically lost in it. And if I hit that light switch, then the darkness, gone, and there's no more lie to tell me that there's nothing around me. Then I can start seeing what's in the room. Some of the things that are like destroying this world are dressed up really nice and shrouded in darkness. And it's said that, like, God says in the Bible that the devil is a lie, that that the truth is in the light, and that God is the truth, and more specifically Jesus. As I started giving it a chance, this is where this is really why I wanted to even share this whole testimony. Was giving it a chance allows me to see the things that have been attached to me in a way that I'd never seen before. Flipping the switch on the light switch to illuminate different things about my life. And the more that I get into this, in the most counterintuitive way or ironic way, is like it doesn't necessarily make the suffering and all the other stuff go away, but it makes me feel as if I have a home base that is better than all the other stuff that was, like dark and deceptive, right? Like it was the truth. Like I also heard a saying as I was growing up, like the truth might hurt, or sometimes the truth hurts, but like it's better than a lie that feels good, on or things like that, or I've heard also, like at least tell me the truth even if it hurts, because I can forgive that. But like if you just lie to me to make me feel better, like that hurts more, like even if the truth hurts you. For example, like let's say, like you stole something or cheated on your partner. It's like your partner might feel temporarily better that you don't tell them you cheated on them, or the person you stole from might not think that you stole from them, meaning they have nothing to be mad about or nothing to be upset about. But when they find out, then it hurts so bad knowing that you lied about it. But like if you just tell them the truth as soon as possible, then they will feel hurt about that. It feels bad to be cheated on, it feels bad to be stolen from, and all these other different things that are bad. It feels bad about those, and the truth somehow gives you at least the truth of it, and it allows you to move on from it, where the lie, I think, keeps you stuck in it. And when I was growing up too, I also heard things about like a white lie building, like you think that it's just a little white lie and it snowballs into something huge. Before you know it, it just overcomes you. And that's the sort of thing about like when the light was shining on me for the first time, it seemed like, with this new information about God and salvation, like it really hit. To get a little bit into that right now too, I'm gonna end this video here pretty soon, but to get into that, I'll just give you like a little like final thing and then conclude this. But when I before all of this, going back to when I was a kid and I had this intuition that there was a God, I didn't think that God was evil. I didn't have that in my intuition. But then as I got further into all of this stuff of the occult and all that stuff, it was like God really might not care. Then I was like confused on it, It was like more leaning towards the fact that he doesn't even care, and that the creation is just the creation and God is just God, and that's that. But like throughout all of that, like there are and there was good things in life where I would just stop and I'm like, God, this must be you, because this is great. This is beyond great. And learning about this stuff, it's like God loves you so much and cares so much and has so much grace and so much compassion that God would embody a human, come down into man and die for you, as the blood of Jesus being the payment to why we are in the situation we are in, to take you out of that. And there, we all kind of see that there's like certain things in life, like you have to pay the price, you have to pay the sacrifice for certain things. Like if you want to for example, if you want to have money, you have to do something for the money. If you come from an upbringing like I have, where you don't have much, you go to work and then you sacrifice your time for the money. Most people do that. There are a few exceptions, but I'm not talking about that right now, right? But in that case, we are kind of accustomed to sacrifice. And like for me, not having any religious upbringing, I understood that it makes sense to have this sort of like, transaction sacrifice for what we're doing. But, like reading into this stuff, after me being so caught up in the darkness that I was seeing, and then reading the Bible and it's saying all of these things that I'm seeing, it's like the world is evil. And it's not like the world is evil because God created it to be evil. It's just these things that God cares so much to give you free will. God will allow anything to happen, but like God is not touched by that. God is above that. So knowing that we are not above that like God, but are a part of what God's created, God gave us a chance in this way to be connected with something that is above all that evil. It is the light in the darkness. Like that is what God is to us in this world. And in my opinion, others might have different opinions on that. I'm definitely not trying to force my opinion on you and say that that is what that is. But to me, that is what that is. And to know that within this world, there are a lot of people who feel similarly like I do. And to know that like we are gifted the chance to accept salvation through the death and resurrection of Jesus, right? Jesus died for us, the embodiment of God, yet Jesus being God resurrected and was alive again, beating death. To sum it up too, I gotta say, like, if the devil is a lie and God is the truth and God resurrected, like everyone thinks that death is the end, when God could, in this instance, Jesus resurrecting can show it is not the end. And that doesn't mean that we're all going to resurrect if we die and we believe in God like Jesus did. But it does mean that if we believe in Jesus in that capacity, that he died for us, that we can live more, then we're not falling for the lie of death, that's it. Because like I thought when I was a kid, I did not think God was evil. And now going through all that and coming back to the other side, it's like, if God really isn't evil, why would God end you in such a fashion to be eaten up by the evils of the world? This is long-winded, and this is a lot of, this is the first time for me to really even try to explain this in a way on a video. But what I'm getting at with this is that there are things of this world that seem so logical and so precise, and they make sense. And then there's this supernatural, there's this mystical, there's this incredible, outside of the framework of logic, things that we can experience that will show us more than any lie could ever keep from us. And I gotta say this, And I'm saying this really in depth because, I think the more I'm talking, it's like my story is my experience, but the story continues, and I do believe that everyone's story is just as important. And for me to think that everyone's story is just as important, it makes me think that the creator and God cares about every single one of us so much. And it's a beautiful thing because with all of this stuff that's came to light for me, it hasn't removed the suffering from the world. Jesus dying didn't remove the suffering from the world. Yet it brought me peace, and it brought me faith, and it brought me better action in this world. Like some things might make people want to do bad because they don't see any better options. The world is filled with it. The so-called leaders are evil, and it's blatant. So it's like you're like, man, I might as well do these bad things, but this light of the truth of it makes an even better way to live through it all. And it might not be the most luxurious in certain instances. And yeah, you might have reason why evil might be a choice you pursue, or a vice being something that you decide to put your energy into and let it take you and alter your mind. Like, there are reasons for that, but there is a better reason to do something more. And that peace of mind and peace of spirit and that protection is a free gift. A free gift to us that we don't have to buy. It was already paid for with the blood of God embodied. That's what I believe. And I want to share that with everyone because that is incredible. That is incredible. Why would I not want to share that with everyone if I believe that it was shared with everyone already? And some people just don't know it. They're sitting in that dark room, not knowing that there is a light switch that can illuminate maybe an exit out of that dark room into sunshine, walking into the sun. And not just the sun as in being bright, but like walking into the glory that radiates, that is God itself. God is that. I hope that this means something to someone. And if it doesn't mean anything to someone out there, it's not going to stop me from feeling good about giving it. Similarly to how Jesus felt going to be crucified and die for everyone. And I am super grateful to be able to share this testimony and super grateful to be able to be a part of this world with everybody. And I hope that faith can be instilled in the faithless. Somebody said something earlier in something that I watched where it was saying that hope is rooted in doubt and faith is rooted in knowing. Like when you have faith in something, there's no doubt. It's rooted in knowing. And that is a beautiful feeling because everyone can be hopeful for something. Like I could say, I hope that I win the lottery. But that means part of me believes that I might not win it. But faith is certain. It is certain. So I wish faith for y'all to know that there is something certain. That the truth is bigger than the lie. That love overcomes hate. That we have been given a gift. I I feel blessed to be able to share this right now. I feel so blessed to be able to share this right now. And I love you. I love you. Thank you for listening. Let me know what you think if you got to the end. And if you feel called to make a testimony, do so. Do so. Follow those callings that you feel are led by God. Even if it's hard. It might not work out right away, but keep going. Keep doing it. Keep doing it. Thank you. I love you. Bye.